In today's video, I'm going to be explaining to you how I've been able to stay in Thailand for almost 3 years without leaving the country. I did cross the border into Myanmar once in late 2020 during the pandemic, and then I just spent about 15 minutes there, got the stamp, and then walked back into Thailand again. And that's the only time I've left the country in almost 3 years. So some of you may be wondering, why do I choose to stay in Thailand? And to answer that question, just watch any number of my other videos and you'll see why. It's a beautiful country, there's delicious food, the people are friendly, it's a lower cost of living, better quality of life, peaceful culture, mostly Buddhist. So yeah, I don't really see any particular reason to go back to the United States. I would consider myself an expat now, and I just choose to stay in Thailand. Obviously, I would love to continue traveling again relatively soon. I'd like to go to the Philippines, Vietnam, maybe Malaysia as well. But for the time being, I'm really pretty happy here in Koh Samui, and I just choose to make this island my home base. I've been back here for roughly 10 months now. And, you know, I have gone back to Bangkok, went to Krabi for about a week just to take a short vacation from paradise, you could say. But for the most part, I just stay here in Koh Samui. And in this video, I'd like to explain to you guys how I've been able to stay here for 3 years without leaving. So I was in Bali for about 2 months. I had bought a one-way ticket there from Austin, Texas, where I've lived for 6 or 7 years. And I spent a few months traveling around Bali. I liked the place, but I did feel like it was a little bit overrated. It was very busy during the time, lots of traffic everywhere. This was shortly before the pandemic. So yeah, I kind of got to know Bali a little bit. And then I flew to Singapore, spent about 2 weeks there. Luckily, I had free hotel accommodation because at the time I was really, kind of strapped for cash, but I was able to arrange free accommodation at some hotels in exchange for photography and marketing, which is something I've been doing for off and on for a few years now. I got to know Singapore a little bit, and I just decided this is not really where I want to stay. The cost of living is incredibly high, and yeah, I didn't really like the place, to be honest. So I flew into Phuket, Thailand, the largest island in Thailand. And I arrived there. I spent a few weeks getting to know the place. And this was in January 2020, like just a few months before the pandemic hit and the world got shut down, right? So at that point, I was like, gosh, I don't really know what to do. I really don't feel like going back to the United States and getting stuck back into the rat race and just being miserable with my life. I was continuing to extend my tourist visa. I came in on a visa exemption for, I think, 30 days, which I was then able to extend another 30 days at immigration, I believe in Bangkok. Then the pandemic hit, and they were actually allowing for a visa amnesty. So if you came into the country before a certain date, then you could get a visa amnesty, which essentially meant that you didn't even need to go to immigration to extend your visa because they were trying to curb the spread of the virus, right? So they didn't want a bunch of people going to immigration, then they have to do all the testing and just screw around with a lot of nonsense. So I was able to get that visa amnesty for, I think, 2 or 3 months. Meanwhile, I was under quarantine at a hostel in Bangkok. I believe it was called Luck Hostel in Chinatown. And essentially, I would just stay there. I would hang out with other people at the hostel. They had catering service, so they bring in meals. And I did sort of feel like a prisoner in the hostel at times because we weren't really allowed to leave. If you went outside, there was like nobody around. It was very surreal and not a very pleasant time of my life, right? But I made it through that and came out stronger on the other side, you could say. So, after that, I continued exploring more of Thailand. I think I went on a motorbike tour from Bangkok down actually Chiang Mai to Bangkok and then back up again. That was about like 3,000 kilometers. I really got to know the country a lot better. Just saw how beautiful it is. Went to a lot of Buddhist temples and took a lot of pictures because I'm also a photographer. And I just decided, like, I want to figure out how to stay here long term. And that's what I've been able to do. So during COVID, they allowed COVID extensions. Like many of the countries, they would just allow you to go to immigration, extend your visa. I was able to get visa extensions 60 days at a time, and I think I paid like 1,900 baht every time, which is roughly $1 per day to stay in Thailand. So for me, that was a total no-brainer, right? Rather than spending thousands of dollars to buy a plane ticket back to the States and then spending, 30 plus hours on planes and then with layovers, it just didn't make sense to me, right? So that's how essentially I've been able to stay in Thailand for 3 years without leaving. As I mentioned earlier, I did have to cross over into Myanmar, otherwise known as Burma. Just briefly, I think I was there like 10 minutes. I didn't really feel like staying in Myanmar because it's not a particularly safe country. It didn't look like a nice place to be. So I just got the stamp. I think I paid, I don't know, who even cares, like 500 baht or something. And I got the stamp, and then I just crossed back over into a place called Mae Sai in northern Thailand, north of Chiang Mai. And then that got me like another 30-day extension. But that's the only time that I've left the country in almost 3 years. And I've also been together with my girlfriend for almost 2 years now. Our anniversary is coming up pretty soon in December. And she's obviously a big part of the reason why I stay in Thailand as well. And also, I'm on my smart visa, which is essentially, it takes the place of a work permit so that you can launch a startup in Thailand, which is something that I've been doing for a while now. I was actually approved over a year ago, but I decided not to collect the smart visa because I was still on my COVID extensions, and I wanted these to run their course before collecting that smart visa. So the application expired, I had to reapply, I got approved again, and then about 4 months ago, I went back to Bangkok and just got it taken care of. This visa I talk more about in another video, which I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. Not many people know about it. They obviously know about the volunteer, the education visa, which are also really good options for staying here long term. These visas are good for 1 year, and then you just have to learn the language or volunteer somewhere, like a school, for example. But if you really want to launch a business that's going to make an impact to the economy in Thailand, then the smart visa is a really good option. So check out that video, link in the description below, where I go through the whole process of how to apply for the smart visa. After the next 6 months, the smart visa is going to expire, and then I have the option to extend it up to 2 years, but I have to show 600,000 baht in a Thai bank account, which is roughly $20,000, which I currently do not have. So I've found another option. Again, all ways to stay in the Kingdom of Thailand legally without leaving. I found another option to get my work permit, my official work permit, to work for a company here in Koh Samui. It's actually a global company, but I can get the work permit, which is good for 1 year, and that allows me to stay yet another year in Thailand. It just goes to show that you can do anything you set your mind to, right? If you're committed to living long term in a foreign country, then you can definitely do it, as long as you're smart, resourceful, and you just stay persistent, right? That's the most important thing. You have to be persistent, and once you've committed to something, you can't give up. So I'm planning on making Koh Samui my home base for at least another year, And then I'm just going to continue scaling up my business. If you're looking to come over to Thailand and stay here long term, you've really got 6 different visa options. Number 1, the volunteer visa. Number 2, education visa. Those are both good for 1 year. Number 3, you got the elite visa, good for up to 15 years in the Kingdom of Thailand. Number 4, you've got the retirement visa. If you're over a certain age, that's 1 year at a time. Number 5, you got the Smart Visa, which I've talked about in some other videos. That's good for up to 2 years, and it allows you to launch a startup or invest in the Kingdom of Thailand. And number 6, you've got the long-term resident visa, which is a new visa that they're starting to roll out in Thailand. There's still not too many details about it, but we know that it's mostly for wealthy expats, investors, and business people looking to set up shop in Thailand. So those are just 6 options. You can search YouTube for any of them, and there's plenty of videos about, you know, how to get these different visas. But if you just want to come in for a month or 2, then you can just come in on your tourist visa or visa exemption, which they've now extended to 45 days. It used to be 30, now it's 45 days for the visa exemption. I'm not sure if that's actually official yet, but it will be very soon if it's not. So that allows you to stay in the kingdom for an extra 15 days and will give you more time to figure out what other options you have to choose from. A lot of times you can just go back to immigration, extend the tourist visa up to 30 days at a time, pay the fee, which I think is normally about 1,900 baht, roughly 60 US dollars. And that will allow you to just come over here, stay in Thailand for a while, maybe travel to some other countries. You can always go to like Singapore or Kuala Lumpur and then just come back into Thailand, get the visa extension, and keep doing that if that's your thing. But I highly recommend checking out the volunteer education visa. Those are some of the easiest ones to get approved for, and that allows you to stay in the Kingdom of Thailand for 1 year. You just have to learn the language or volunteer at some nonprofit. So those are some really good options as well. And let me know if you have any questions. My email is in the description below, so don't hesitate to shoot me over any questions you may have. I'm here as a resource for you. With that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel and take care, stay safe. Peace from Thailand.